What does this piece of paper mean to you? As you can see, one side is printed and the other side is totally blank. Some of you might recycle this paper and not think about it after that. But there's a lot of potential to this paper that we often overlook, and we choose to recycle it instead. In fact, back in 2001, when I was 4 years old, yep, I was cute. Still walking it. I can see my girlfriend in the audience shaking her head right now. No. But actually at this time, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and I had really bad issues in writing. So since we didn't have a lot to work with back then, my mom decided to bring back all this used one-sided paper so that I can practice my writing on. Eventually, I got better at it. Fast forward to 2015, when I had this opportunity to go to college in Malaysia. I was ecstatic to get into a pretty good school, and I got a pretty good scholarship to go with it as well. But I noticed there's a lot of wastage in paper that tends to happen in the academic institution that are at times unavoidable, but oftentimes very wasteful. So me and my friends decided to do something about it. We first thought back to what we learned in school. We thought about setting up a recycling campaign. But we soon realized that there's issues in the recycling process that we often don't talk about. In order to understand these negative effects, we should first dissect the recycling supply chain. The recycling process is broken down into a few distinct parts. As you can see, it starts off with the collection process, then transportation of recycled materials to recycling facilities so that it can be broken down into granules so that factories can reprocess them into other products like cans or plastic bottles. Sounds pretty simple, but when you take a closer look, there's actually a lot of pollution that happens in every single process. Let's start with the simplest one, which is transportation. As citizens of the earth, we recycle, so we need huge trucks to actually transport our recyclable materials from point A to point B. However, these huge trucks tend to release huge amounts of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide gases to our atmosphere. There are 179,000 waste collection vehicles in the US today. 91% of them are diesel fueled, and most of them are old. Although these huge trucks actually perform a vital public service to us, they tend to release huge amounts of toxic gases, fine particulates, and almost 3 dozen toxic contaminants to our atmosphere. Secondly, there's issues in the recycling facilities themselves. Not only does this reduce the amount of viable recyclables, but there tends to be a huge health risk when these recyclables have some form of contamination. One extreme example actually happened in Taiwan back in 1992, where recycled metals that had gamma radiation in them were used to build a building, causing many people to contract gamma radiation. In addition, recycling takes time, and at times there's a need for material that recycling can handle. So manufacturers tend to opt for virgin material compared to recycled ones, just to meet demands. But recycling at times hurts the environment has got nothing to do with the technical process. It's the mindset it gives the people. By buying recyclable materials, by throwing them into recycling bins, we are all saving the planet. We are all a bunch of Captain Planets trying to keep pollution to the curb. But how effective is that when the US today still produces up to 250 million tons of trash every single year? So now we know the negative effects of recycling. We need other alternatives to manage our waste. In fact, we've been preaching about these other alternatives all along, which is reduce and reuse. There's a certain reason why we say in that specific order, and that is reduce, reuse, and recycle. And that is because it's better to reduce compared to reuse, and it's better to reuse compared to recycle. But we tend to recycle more just because modern media tells us to do so. So whenever we have a piece of trash in our hand, we actually tend to do more recycling compared to reducing or reusing. So how do we reduce and reuse our waste? Well, simple. First, you have to identify what our waste that comes out from your household. Then try to think of ways to think, like what to do with that specific waste. Can I reduce this waste from happening again? Can I reuse this waste with something else? Or if both fails, can I just recycle it instead? One good example would be a plastic bottle. Instead of buying mineral water that comes in a plastic bottle, why not get your own reusable water bottle and fill it up in water fountains instead? In this case, reduce helps. But how about the tub of margarine that we just bought? Well, after you use whatever that's inside that tub, you can actually reuse that tub to be a pot. In this case, you can actually plant lettuces in them. And in fact, this is a form of reduce as well, since lettuces do come in plastic packaging. So not only you know that whatever that comes from your backyard is cheap and fresh, but you also get to save the environment as well. So now we know that we actually have to put more emphasis on reducing and reusing compared to just recycling. Recycling does help to a certain degree without a doubt, but when there's other better options, why do it? As students in the STEM field, me and my friends are aware of these negative effects, and we do notice there's a lot of wastage in paper in the academic institution. The recycling paper industry doesn't really help as well, since that specific industry is a really high energy-intensive industry, and most of Malaysia's electricity actually comes from coal generation. Reducing doesn't really help as well, since reducing paper has some form of technological intervention that are at times expensive for institutions and also businesses. So based on what I just explained to you just now, we've identified that reduce and recycle is not really a good option for paper. So me and my friends decided to come up with a reuse initiative so that people can reuse their one-sided newspaper before actually throwing them away. With that idea in mind, we came up with Project Booklets, a social enterprise that empowers people to manage their waste efficiently. So, going into this enterprise, we actually work together with businesses and also institutions to actually collect all this one-sided newspaper and then make them into booklets. Exactly what my mom did for me when I was 4 years old. These booklets actually save 50% of paper wastage by encouraging people to actually use the other side of the paper compared to take new pieces of paper. Going into this enterprise, we've actually achieved a lot. We've saved up to 5 tons of paper till this date, and we've also worked together with 11 institutions globally. And in line with how these pieces of paper actually helped with my education, we also worked together with the United Nations High Commission of Refugees to actually donate all our booklets to 50 refugee schools throughout Malaysia. And not only that, we also work with businesses as well by turning their waste into other products like terrarium farms and artwork. So with a little creativity, one man's trash can be another man's treasure. So friends, in the mantra of reduce, reuse, and reduce, and recycle, let us put more emphasis on reducing and reusing. Let us also rethink the way we see our waste so that we can live much more sustainable lives. Do not throw away the glass jar. In fact, put something in it, or put a plant in it instead. Do not buy mineral water that comes in a plastic bottle. Bring your own reusable water bottle and fill it up in water fountains. And do not throw away the one-sided newspaper. Collect them and make them into booklets. These simple changes in lifestyle will bring a better future towards us. And in line with our TEDx team, We always reach a crossroad whenever we have a piece of trash in our hand. So let us not just throw away our trash for the betterment of ourselves and for our kids. Thank you.